Good morning. My name is Alba de Leon, and I am a faculty member at Palo Alto College. I teach in the Fine Arts Department and have been there for just about 30 years since I received my plaque. So I teach art appreciation, art history, as well as studio courses. And it is through the studio courses that the more I taught, the more I became aware of the significance of mindfulness and its presence. This past spring, Alamo Colleges as a district actually joined up with the city of San Antonio and our mayor to offer a 5-week course called Compassionate Integrity Training and Secular Ethics. It was at that time that I met my colleagues who are with us today, and that is Renee, Carrie, and Cricket. And they will also share and participate in this presentation with me because we are here today to offer you some experiences from our own teaching and learning of mindfulness, as well as entertaining your interests and questions about mindfulness and joining us this morning. So we're hoping that you stay tuned and be active with us during this presentation. The only other thing that I wanted to add is that my interest in mindfulness has extended to the point of actually seeking certification through a program called Mindfulness Meditation Teacher Certification Program offered by the Awareness Training Institute and the Greater Good Science Center at the University of California at Berkeley. And my instructors there are Tara Bach and Jack Cornfield. And towards the end of this session, but you will already notice it on the chat, is a Radical Compassion resource book that we will offer to you. But let's stop there with the introduction and move on to Carrie, who will share some information with us. Good morning, Carrie.
Good morning, Alba. Good morning, everyone. I'm so happy to be here with you all. Actually, I'd like to start with kind of an icebreaker, if you don't mind, Alba.
That's great.
Maybe we could just kind of get to know each other. We've got a little bit of time here for that. And I would love to get to know everyone a little better. I think we all would. So actually, if we could start with, I think one really wonderful way to get to know people is to share our names and how, parts of our names, the history of our names or nicknames that we have, how those kind of form our identity. And I think in some amazing ways, they really kind of share parts of ourselves. And I always find that a really wonderful way to just get to know unique things about people. So if I could start with you, Alba. Could you share your name and the origin of your name? And we have a little time. So if there's something unique or special or historical or a meaning or anything about it that tells us a little bit about you.
So let me, lead us into the next part of this time together that we had explored. And when I say we, it had been Carrie, Cricket, Renee, and myself who began to design this, hopefully try to design something for you for this entire hour. And so I'd like to have Cricket and Renee now at least address or begin to share with you some information about typical practices that are used in mindfulness. So,
thanks, Alba. So today, really starting with building space together and understanding one another in a little different way with just hearing a few pieces of your story around your name and connecting in that way we address this as a practice in being together and in and of itself as a mindfulness practice. And so today what we really are encouraging all of us to explore is mindfulness not as some out there concept, but as a householder practice for all of us, and something that can be very accessible and user friendly. And it's not like starting a CrossFit program that's intimidating and you are aspirational and then you never go back after you overstretch a muscle. It's actually friendly, and there are ways we can find access to it. So today, Cricket and I are just going to spend a few minutes with a little piece of content from one of the programs that we're involved with, Compassion and Integrity Training. And it is an amalgamation of many practices brought together in a way that there are skills and practices that build on one another and that are user-friendly potentially, and that can be accessed on a regular day basis. We've all been in the conversation that mindfulness has been quite co-opted and is part of a really commercialized mindset, not only in the United States, but actually worldwide. And so it's both something that is very beneficial and something that is commercialized potentially in a way that it becomes distracting or confusing how we can approach it. So today we're offering just some very basic components that we hope are not drifting into that notion of being anything but just user-friendly. It's the research that's been done in the last few years around trauma resilience has informed us on a neuroscience level and being implemented in many different healthcare domains, that there are ways that we can bring our own bodies back into what is called the resilient zone. And without going into a whole slide deck and speaking to that at any length, we can just name in a very simple way, and any of you have had physiology will know that we have two basic systems. We have a parasympathetic and a sympathetic system. So our parasympathetic system is when we're in the calming and relaxing and we feel safe and we feel comfortable. And our sympathetic system is a very necessary part of functioning. And whenever we're animated and doing things and we need it and we're more energetic, or we're also having a higher level of adrenaline, and on and on. So that natural wave set is very much how we want to be living. And it's very easy also with the stressors of our lives to get completely spiking back up on the higher and the lower levels, so that it becomes, instead of a set of waves that are very navigable and that we can ride, we can surf our lives, as it were, with the natural ups and downs, and rather there can be something that's quite a bit more dramatic and uncomfortable, and that kicks us out of what we can call the resilient zone. And that's neuroscience based, and that's the stretchiness of our ability to pull ourselves back in is also what we're going to work with today. So with that as the backdrop, we wanted to address three different parts we can all do with our own bodies and with our own practices every day and in very simple ways. We want to address three components, and we're going to name those tracking, resourcing, and grounding. So what I want to do with all of us today, and anybody who can turn your screen on, it's fun to see the animation of this, I'm going to invite us to have a moment where we're going to pay attention to tracking. So the first thing we're going to do is, anybody who can turn your screen on, all you need are your hands clasped in prayer hands together. And then we're going to invite ourselves to rub our hands together like this until I tell you to stop. And it's going to be long enough that it'll be a little bit, of an activity. So keep going. And be really rigorous so you really get the benefits and the impact of this. Okay, now stop. And just notice what you notice. And notice sensations in your body. And locate where you're noticing the sensations in your body the most. And tell us about it. So unmute yourselves and tell us what sensations you are noticing.
I have this tingling up here in my arms, from my hands up to here.
Okay, so tingling up your arm, up through your arms and down through your hands. What else?
I noticed my toes were cold.
Me too. Yeah. So somehow, maybe a comparison, or maybe not, but cold toes. What else? And what do cold toes feel like, Alba?
Like they desire some socks. But to stay in line with the grounding, it made me feel my shoes.
Aha. Oh,
And so
Alba was skipping ahead, you guys. We're not there yet, but she will return to that. But awesome. Yeah. But keep going, Alba.
no, just that. Cold toes up against some shoes.
Cool. All right. So with the sensations from rubbing our hands together, what else did you notice? Anything else that you can notice? Okay, so heat in our hands, probably a common experience potentially. So this is what I want to lift up for this moment is all of us have the capacity to notice body sensations, and many of us are out of practice. So body literacy is a dying art form, and yet we have a body system that gives us very instant feedback when we do things. So let's just name some other ways we get really instant feedback that's a version that we could track. And let me name one that happens to me when I'm public speaking. My mouth will tend to get kind of dry. Why is that happening? Anybody know on a physiology level?
It's nervousness or anxiety.
Exactly. So it's a very quick feedback loop. So my body is going into a sympathetic state. I'm a little upregulated and I'm animated and I may be a little nervous. And so what's happening is my body's doing all kinds of very rapid response to me. It's very direct. It's not going to my brain and being analyzed and then processed back out. It's happening like that. And so what's happening is I'm shutting down in a particular way because my body is like very aware it needs to work on very core things. And distributing moisture to all the peripheral parts is maybe not so important. So there's a contraction happening. So think about if you've been around other people public speaking and you start to notice color coming along their neck, and I don't know if you've noticed that, or maybe it even happens to you, but that's also a physiological response. What's happening for that person? Similar to mouth being dry.
The heart's pumping, blood is going under the skin, being pushed to circulate, which is causing the blushing.
That's right. So it's going it's perforating out to the peripheral arteries, and there's flushing that'll come up in that way. Or how about just getting sweaty all of a sudden? You're absolutely at a normal temperature. Like I have cold feet, but then I'm sweaty. How would that be happening? So again, it's like all these instant responses. So what we want to lift up here is a mindfulness practice for all of us who are very trained to live in our heads. And any of you affiliated with universities, it's highly, highly, highly encouraged that that's where you hang out. So it's a practice, a really, really significant practice to start noticing your body sensations. And that may seem almost patronizing or sort of condescending. And I actually invite all of us to notice that our words, even our vocabulary around sensation words, leave a lot to be desired. So I invite all of us to take on the mindfulness practice of noticing and naming our body sensations as a habit that we can start to form. And with that, I want to pass it to Cricket, who's going to take us through the other pieces of this.
Hey, so can you hear me? I think I just got a beep. All right. So we're going to talk a little bit about, how we as basically human bodies deal with everyday things in life. So we can talk about big trauma. So those are things like if someone were to have an accident, or if there were to be a situation of war, or if someone were to have a violent attack, or anything that really threatens us from a physical standpoint. We're going to have a very visceral physical reaction to that. We're going to go into fight or flight. And a good visual image for this particular type of trauma, what we call big trauma, is think of a lightning strike. That's a very visceral image in terms of how the body perceives these types of traumas. The second type of trauma is going to be more of a cumulative trauma. We call those small traumas. And those traumas can be anything from stress, they can be types of discrimination, it can be environmental fatigue. These are the types of small traumas that sort of are cumulative, and they occur over the course of a longer period of time, and that also can sort of wreak havoc on our nervous system. And a good visual image of this is like lava. So lava moves fairly slowly, but it is very destructive. And so when we think about, how we as energy beings, so for instance, if I just pull, physicist, he's a theoretical physicist, Erwin Schrödinger, who basically says that essentially everything is energy, which includes us. So if every particle in our body, every organ has its own electrical field. So we are, in a sense, energy. And so if we think of ourselves, in a sense, as being lightning rods for various occurrences in life, then we have to do something with that energy. So if we hold it all in, it really does create health issues for us as in addition to being fairly disruptive. So we want to use something that's called grounding. And essentially grounding does exactly the same thing a lightning rod does, which is dissipates this energy to another source. So it's basically the practice of having direct contact with another object, or it could even be, part of your body. It could be that you having the intentionality of either holding your hands in a certain way or holding your arms in a certain way, and making that mental adjustment to sort of putting yourself back in the present by this is how you're responding to whether it's a big T or a little t, a big trauma or a little trauma. And you're wanting to get to this area of a resilient zone so that you can sort of level out. So some examples of grounding, things that we do, we as humans do this automatically, even without thinking about it. If you ever notice that someone, grabs a table or a desk for stability, maybe if they're just kind of, trying to, gather themselves. Some people will cross their arms, so they'll hold their hands in a certain way. This is a stabilizing maneuver that we do to ground ourselves. One of the best things that we can do to ground ourselves is to plant our feet firmly on the ground. If we're outside, the better. The earth is one of the best ways to ground, is to go out and stand in the grass, preferably without shoes, but some people have issues with that. And to stabilize, basically you're taking, as a lightning rod, you're taking all that trauma, or, little trauma, big trauma, and you're funneling it into another object, which the earth is the fastest and most effective way of doing this, but we're not always outside all the time. So we like to share, what I call share the load. So some of us have talismans that that's the word I'm using. It's kind of a loaded word, but we have rings that we wear, or we have a St. Christopher medal that we have around our neck, or a Sacred Heart medal, or we might have our favorite pen that goes with us to every class that we teach. Or some people have, just a stone or something that they hold in their hand. Everything on earth is matter. Everything that's comprised of matter has atoms, and atoms have electrons, and electrons have a magnetic field. So by doing that, we're transferring the energy of these traumas into something else. And so grounding is a very tactile way of us to calm ourselves down and bring us back into what we call the resilience zone. So what I like to do is, take a moment and you look around, or maybe you're wearing, or maybe you just want to hold your arm or something, or grab the arms of your chair. But pick something. Pencils work. Pencils actually are fantastic because in addition to being an everyday object, they have a graphite shaft that runs through the middle. And so you can capitalize on the secret resistor here. I have 4 boys and I've done that science project 4 times. So I have good scientific research on that. So you're going to put your feet flat on the ground, don't cross your legs. So uncross your legs, and you're going to put your feet flat on the ground. And this is sort of the counterweight to Renee's exercise of moving our hands together and creating this energy that we can feel. What we're going to do is we're going to either put our hands on the arms of our chair, or you can hold on to your leg, or you can hold on to anything that you wish. It could be, something as simple as just a little stone. And you're going to close your eyes, and you're going to intentionally think about moving what you're feeling into this object or into the ground. We could be outside, but we're not. We're just going to stay here and do this just for about a second. And I want you to pay attention to what you feel, what your body feels. So this is a lot like the exercise we just did, but instead we're going to think about what we're sensing whenever we hold this other item. And this is an exercise that can be done anytime, anywhere, for any reason. Because people's perceptions of trauma vary. What could be traumatic for one might not be traumatic for another. You can do this in the line at the grocery store. You can do this in traffic. You can do this anywhere. Okay, so now give me, or give us, I should say, because we're all benefiting from this. What are some of the reactions, or what are some of the sensations that you felt during that very short and hopefully instructive exercise?
I try to visualize my energy going into my pen, and it felt like a release from my arms that was in the conductor here, and it felt like some weight, a little bit of weight lifted, a little bit of ease.
Very good.
Yeah.
Yes, I like that. A lot of us exercise, especially if we need to release tension. This is a very similar process. We are taking energy and pushing it out into something else, whether it's the floor. So anything, any other reactions. I always feel a little bit of a current running from usually my feet to the floor, because that's my most common transference.
I also went back to my feet, but this time particularly to my heels.
Mm.
So it wasn't
Nice.
to the cold toes, but to the heels.
And we have a lot of idioms that it's funny, because this is such a natural occurrence, so the term digging in your heels is a very good reference to that, where you are standing your ground. Standing your ground is another idiom that refers to, you're holding on, you're, stronger. Anyone else? Did anyone use another object? When I first learned about this, I was amazed at how many little things I surround myself with, that even, I have longer hair, so I have this plastic, which probably has, as far as electromagnetic things, probably a very low, but I do it. I fidget with it all the time, and I'm moving things into it. So it's really not a matter of weight or type of inanimate object. It's just something that you do. So does anyone have any of those, I guess I would say silent? Oh, yes, I almost forgot. How could I forget? Okay. Thank you so much. You get the Gold Star of the Day Award for prompting that one. Animals, pets. Our pets are wonderful, wonderful grounding. We'll call them companions. Anything that gives, pets, it's almost like what they have like a sixth sense in terms of being able to do that and helping us. And mine are too big to hold up to the camera, but surrounded by those of you who love animals, this is a wonderful, wonderful way to ground.
Hey, Cricket, will you also touch on resourcing and how actually Mallory's cat could be both a resource and a grounding function?
Yes.
Just because we put in the chat that tracking, resourcing, and grounding are the three components of returning to our resilient zone. I just want to make sure that people get that idea about resourcing as the discrete part.
Thank you. Yes, I will. So when we are in, let's just say in terms of, let's say anxiety, we'll pick anxiety or stress. We think in terms of something that calms us. We might think of a person. We might think of, one of our parents or siblings. We might think of a beloved friend. We might think of a place that gave us this immense feeling of acceptance and warmth and peace. And so we do that naturally as humans. We have sort of references. I call them references in our head that we kind of go back to and calm ourselves with. So resourcing sort of plays with that a little bit. It takes something that we find calming or we find soothing, and instead of just remembering this, which is nice, but putting yourself exactly in that place to get sensation. So we're going to use the tracking part. We want to not remember, but we want to be in that place or be with that person and track how we feel, because we want to sort of associate this resource, which can be a pet, an animal. It could be really anything that brings us this calming feeling or this soothing feeling. And we want to pay attention to how we feel in that moment. And so we want to make sure that we are paying attention to how our body feels in response to this, because in that moment we're resourcing. It can be a place, it doesn't even have to be a real place. It can be a place that you've just created in your mind that you put yourself. Some of us do that when we, especially right now where traveling is hard, when we put ourselves somewhere at the beach and try to be calm in that moment. That's a great resource. So if I were resourcing with the beach, for instance, I would imagine, I'd close my eyes and I would imagine how the air feels on my face, or how the sand feels under my feet, or maybe how the sounds around me with the waters crashing and the birds. And what I'm doing is I'm calming my body down. I'm calming my nervous system down to respond to this memory actually by having my body calm at the same time I'm recalling, or I would say recalling and flipping over this to be a present tense. Ooh, I like that. The hot bath. That's a really, really helpful one. And it's one that you can do, pretty much everywhere that you have a bathtub. So I like that one a lot. What are some other resources that you may or may not use?
One thing I did, Alba mentioned earlier my previous role in leadership, and it was quite stressful. And one thing that I found that really helped was, this is going to sound kind of crazy, but I have a privacy fence in my backyard, so I didn't mind looking crazy, but I would set up my sprinkler system and turn it on, and I would just slowly walk around that sprinkler. So it was both cleansing, and also I would do it barefoot. So I had my feet planted in the grass too, and that really helped. To just kind of rejuvenate, ground, and cleanse, and, relieve some stress. And I always walked away feeling much lighter.
Okay, Matilda, that's so multifaceted. Sorry to interrupt, but it's just like, it's ritual. It's all these different pieces. That's really lovely. My question is, can you imagine doing it? Even if you're not doing it, the resourcing is reimagining it and building all the sensory experience around that when you're in your office between seeing students or between meetings. It's the practice of resurrecting that and building it back in a sensory way. So I just wanted to, your example is maybe going to be a resource for all of us imagining, rebuilding that, but it's a really beautiful one. So I just wanted to thank you. Sorry for jumping in, but that was so interesting to listen to.
No, thank you. I'm going to do that. I never thought of that before. Instead, I've always thought, I cannot wait to get home so that I can do that. And no, I can, like you said, resurrect those feelings and emotions and how it felt on my skin in the comfort of my office.
Right.
Yeah.
Medical teams are being trained all over between walking in different clinical rooms, that they take this pause and they do this practice. And it's actually this kind of mini cleanse, just what you're saying. And then they step in, and they cross the threshold in with a new, patient or a person to see, but they've let go, they've really worked to get back in their resilient zone before they go on to the next. So this is the kind of household or kind of practices we're touching in on today.
Yes. And I love how you're using both the tracking, you like the sensations of how it feels, along with the grounding piece. So you're using your tracking and your grounding, and you're creating a resource, which is like perfect. Let's see. Ooh, there's a nice one, Mallory. Go ahead. Carrie, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say that this is a wonderful time to talk about how we all kind of have different ways of doing this. And it's very often that we're looking for something comforting, but having something that energizes or, just somehow, flips us, like something cold or something sensory, something that tingles. Those can also be useful. I mean, depending on what works for you. And this is where it's just so personal, what works for each of us and how long we need to get into this space. Because for some people, like Mallory was saying, just thinking of the smell of burnt tortillas and with that smell comes all these sources of comfort. But we can also do what Matilda does, which is use things that kind of feel cleansing or feel in some ways dysregulating to kind of, move us out of a certain place that we are in sensorially.
Alba, I'm aware of time and I want to turn it to you, although there's so much we could continue with, but I want to turn it to you for your process before our time is up. And you're muted in case you would like to be heard.
Thank you, Renee, for bringing that up. I was just trying to discuss that with Mallory as our time is coming up in 2 minutes. And what we hope we've offered you, so I'll wrap it up, to say this, that each of us in our own lives and in our own way are looking for a way to ground ourselves, perhaps track track and resource and discover different ways to be during these difficult times. At the beginning of this session, we also offered you a document by Tara Bach that deals with an acronym that is called RAIN, and it stands for Recognize, Allow, Investigate, and Nurture. And I invite you to look at that and to consider incorporating into your life. We are so grateful that you were here with us. This was our first time together, and when I say us, it's Cricket, Renee, and Carrie, and now we invited John as well. And so with you, my colleagues and friends, thank you. Thank you for coming.